All right, good morning or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. Today we are talking about the cell cycle in science. So remember, we talked about cycles a lot at the beginning of the year. Remember that a cell cycle is when something continues to repeat itself, right? It starts at one point and it has different phases that it goes through, and then it returns to that same starting point. We talked about the water cycle, we talked about the oxygen and the nitrogen cycle, we talked about all sorts of cycles. Excuse me. But today, we are talking about the cell cycle because just like all of those other things that we talked about, cells also have a cycle, and their cycle is really important. So what we're looking at here is the page in your book. This is page 32 in your book if you want to follow along, or we're going to read it right here. So you don't have to get it out, but we're going to read it together because it has lots of important information that I want to make sure that you hear as well as see. Okay, because details, and in science, details are super important, and we've got some new vocabulary. The vocabulary words are highlighted here in yellow, and in your book, they're on this side of the page, okay, on page 32. So if you want to, you can go back and look at those words later. But right now, we're just going to read together. Listen so carefully. All right. Most living things do not grow larger because their cells get bigger. Instead, they grow when they produce more and more cells. Interestingly, cells multiply by dividing. Okay, so things don't really grow larger because cells get bigger. Instead, they grow larger when cells multiply and divide. Okay, so they reproduce. The cell cycle is the series of events occurring in the life of a cell. This includes its growth, its duplication, that means to make a copy of itself, so a duplication of DNA, and the eventual cell division. Okay, growth, duplication of DNA, and eventual cell division. The time required to complete a cell cycle differs according to the type of cell. Well, that makes sense, right? Depending on what kind of cell it is, it might take a long time or it could take a very short time. The common bean cell requires about 19 hours to complete a full cycle, whereas yeast cells, yeast is what we add to make bread rise up, only require about 90 minutes. The cell cycle consists of 3 basic stages. Let's read them together. Interphase, mitosis, and sorry, my throat. Cytotogenesis. Cytotogenesis. There we go. Cytotogenesis. Interphase is the stage in which the cell grows, develops, and matures. This occurs at the beginning of the cell cycle and takes up the most time. Okay, so interphase is when the cell does grow. Okay, so even though an organism doesn't grow larger just because the cells grow, cells still grow. So interphase is the stage in which a cell grows and develops and matures. And that happens at the beginning of the cell cycle. It takes up the most time. Here, the organelles are copied, producing enough organelles for 2 new cells. Copies of the DNA are also made so that each new cell will have its own set of chromosomes. All right, so there's some important information. Let me ask you some questions to make sure you were really paying attention. You should know the answers to these questions, okay? How do organisms get larger? How do organisms get larger? If you said they get larger because cells are reproducing and there's more cells because they're multiplying and dividing, then you were correct. Give yourself a pat on the back. All right? Things get larger because cells multiply and divide. Good. All right. Why do you think an organism produces more cells instead of having one cell just grow larger? Why would that be? Why would we need more and more and more cells instead of just one cell that just gets bigger and bigger? Good question. Well, let's imagine for a second that we have a bag, okay, a brown paper bag. In the United States, you get your groceries, or you used to get your groceries in a brown paper bag. Here, they use plastic, so it's hard to find the brown paper bag, or I would show you. But imagine with me for a second that you have a brown paper bag. And then I come over, and your brown paper bag, let's say it's about this big, yeah? And then I come over and I hand you a whole pile full of balloons. And I tell you, blow up the balloons and stuff them all in the bag. I want you to fit all of the balloons in that bag. How are you going to do it? Well, you either have to make the balloons small enough for all of them to fit, or if you keep stuffing them in, that brown paper bag is going to rip. Or if you just blow up one balloon too much, it's going to pop, right? Well, the same thing is kind of true with our bodies or with cells. If one cell just kept growing and growing and growing, it would just, right? It wouldn't work. So God created it so that cells need to reproduce, and that's how things grow. Okay, not by getting bigger, but by lots of more cells coming. All right. Now, let's look at the phases of the cell cycle, because here we talked about the cell cycle a little bit. But now let's look together at some phases of the cell cycle, okay? So we're going to take a break from this page. Escape. There we go. And, well, before we do that, you know what? Let's just finish this and read these other things, and then we'll go look at it. Mitosis is another phase of the cell cycle, okay? So mitosis begins after interphase. Remember, interphase was the first phase. Interphase is the first part of the cell cycle. Mitosis begins when interphase is done. Mitosis is the stage in which the cell divides its nucleus into two. Okay, remember that all cells have a nucleus in the middle, right? Kind of the brain of the cell, so to speak. So mitosis is when that nucleus divides into two parts. There are 4 basic phases in mitosis. Okay, so we've had interphase and we had mitosis, but inside of mitosis, there's 4 different phases. Woo, lots of stuff needs to happen in a cell cycle. During the phases, the membrane around the nucleus disappears and the DNA condenses. That means it gets tighter and smaller and it coils into an X-shaped chromosome. We're going to look at that in a little bit. The double set of chromosomes, okay, so we have an X-shaped chromosome. It kind of looks like, well, it looks like an X. Yep, looks like an X. The double set of chromosomes align in the middle of the cell. Then they pull apart and each set moves to the opposite sides of the cell. So we have an X and then they get to the middle of the cell and then they pull apart and each set moves to the opposite side of the cell. 2 nuclear membranes form and then the chromosomes uncoil. Okay, so to coil is to like wind up. And then once those nuclear membranes form, then the chromosomes uncoil. Once a cell has gone through mitosis, its nucleus and its DNA have been doubled and divided evenly. The rest of the cell must then split apart. That's the part where we get to the word that's really hard for me to say. Cytotokinesis. Cytotokinesis. Kinesis is the process in which the cell's cytoplasm is completely divided in half. All right, so now the cell, whoop, in half. In animal cells, the cell membrane squeezes together, separating the two nuclei. The cell starts to look as if the cytoplasm is being pinched. In plant cells, a cell plate first forms to separate the two nuclei, and then the cell wall forms. Okay, because remember that a plant cell needs its structure, otherwise it wouldn't have its shape. So a plant cell can't just squeeze together in the middle and divide, or it would not have the right shape to it, wouldn't have the structure. So in a plant cell, we get like a wall that helps divide that nucleus into two, so it becomes two separate nuclei, and then the wall forms, and then it divides. All right, now I want to show you the cell cycle. All right, let me move this video over here. Now, here we see it kind of pictured form, okay? We have interphase. Remember, that's where things start. That's where growing and development happens. Then we have mitosis, and there's lots of things happening, but see right here, there's those chromosomes that are coiling up into the X shape. You see those in there? Then we have mitosis metaphase. So this was prophase. This is the next one, metaphase, okay, where they're lining up in the middle there. Then we have mitosis antiphase, where they separate and they go to the separate sides of the cell, remember? Then we have mitosis telophase, where they uncoil and they become straighter lines again, okay? And now we have two almost separate cells. See, they're starting to pinch together in the middle. So we know this is an animal cell, not a plant cell. And then we have cytokinesis, where the two cells separate. And now we have two nucleus with its own set of duplicated chromosomes and DNA. Pretty cool. All right, so there are the phases. Now, it is hard to remember all those phases. So this is the part where I'm going to teach you some hand motions, and these are what you're going to show me on Flipgrid. You're going to tell me the phases, and you're going to show me with your hands these hand signs that are going to help you remember all of the phases, okay? Because this is the important thing. You're going to need to know the cell cycle. All right, so for interphase, we're going to take our hands one on top of the other, and we're going to lock our fingers together. Interphase. Everything is still hooked together, right? It's one. The first phase, interphase. Okay, interphase. Then mitosis prophase. You're going to lock your hands like you're praying when you're a little kid. All right? Okay, so we have interphase, mitosis prophase. Now we're going to go into mitosis metaphase. So you're going to just open up a little bit, and you're going to stick your thumbs up in the air. Okay, let's try it again. We have interphase, mitosis prophase, mitosis metaphase, and then mitosis antiphase. Your hands are apart here. Then mitosis telophase, okay, and cytokinesis. All right, let's try it all together. Interphase, mitosis prophase, mitosis metaphase, mitosis antiphase, mitosis telophase, and cytokinesis. All right, so you can repeat that as many times as you need to, but on Flipgrid, you need to know the different phases in order with your hand motions. All right, so if you need to go back and watch the video again, go ahead and do that. But you can use that to help you get it in your brain, okay? The different phases and the order that they go in, because the order is important. All right, I hope you're realizing that this cycle is pretty impressive. It's pretty cool. And God came up with this cycle. And because of this cycle, cells continue to duplicate and separate, and we continue to have life. Okay? And things continue to grow and to change, all because of all of these things that are happening inside the itty bitty tiny cells. All right, pretty cool. All right, let's go to the next part over here. This is where you're going to need your Play-Doh and your pipe cleaners. Play-Doh and your pipe cleaners. Now, good thing that we practiced direction following yesterday in Bible, because these directions are just a tad bit tricky. So pay close attention. When you are done, you're going to show us in your Flipgrid what you made. Okay? So here we go. This is also in your workbook if you want to look at it. It says making chromosomes. That's what we're going to do together right now. We're going to make chromosomes. All right. So number 1, when the DNA strand makes a copy of itself and forms the X-shaped chromosome, each half is called a sister chromatid, or chromatid, sorry. All right. The two sisters chromatids are held together near the middle by a centromere. Centromere, right there. All right. In this activity, each pipe cleaner represents one sister chromatid, and the Play-Doh represents the centromere. Okay, so here we have one sister chromatid, and here we have another sister chromatid, and in the middle, we have our centromere. Okay, the center point. Okay, now, first, we're going to separate 6 pipe cleaners into piles by color. So you should have 2 of each color, making 3 piles. Okay? So you could have 2 red, 2 blue, 2 green, or 2 orange, 2 purple, 2 yellow. Okay, whatever it is, but you should have 2 of each in 3 piles. 6 pipe cleaners total. Okay? So now you should have in front of you 3 piles of 2. Each pipe cleaner represents one complete set of DNA. Okay? Bend each pipe cleaner into the shape of a V, and then place the V-shaped pipe cleaner sideways. All right? So now you should have 6 pipe cleaners in sideways V's. All right. As number 3, as part of their normal life cycle, the cells in your body are constantly making new copies of your DNA. To demonstrate this, match the 2 pipe cleaners with the same colors, putting the V points together. They should look like an X. Okay, so if you have 2 yellow V's, you're going to put the 2 yellow V's together like so. All right? If you have 2 red, you put the 2 red together. Okay, so the point of the V is touching. Let me show you what that looks like. I should have brought some pipe cleaners in here, but I did not. So I'm going to draw it for you. Okay, so you should have, if you have orange, where's my camera? Oh, there you go. Okay, if you had 2 orange pipe cleaners or whatever color you have, now you have them almost like an X, okay? The 2 points of the V are touching each other. All right. Then it says, do that for all 3 sets of pipe cleaners, okay? So you should have 3 sets of these kind of looking like butterfly wings, right? Okay, your pipe cleaners should now be like so. All right. Now it says, next pinch off, this is number 4, next pinch off a small piece of Play-Doh about the size of a large marble. Place the Play-Doh into the center where the 2 V's meet and then secure them together. All right, so now in the middle of your two V's, you should have a large marble-sized piece of Play-Doh holding them together, okay? So you have your centromere, your center point, and you have two sets of DNA that copied each other. All right. The Play-Doh represents the centromere, and this is what holds those two sets of DNA, the chromosome, together before they are separated during mitosis. Okay, now line up your 3 chromosomes, placing the centromeres in a vertical line. So just like mine, you should have one on top of another in a vertical line, okay, in front of you on your desk or wherever you're working. Okay? This represents the phase in mitosis called metaphase. Now gently pull the chromosomes apart at the Play-Doh. Okay, so in the middle of the Play-Doh, you're going to start to pull them apart, bringing one set to the left and one set to the right. This represents antiphase and telophase. You should now have 2 exact sets of DNA strands in each color. If this were the cell cycle, what should happen next? Explain in detail. Okay, so for your Flipgrid, you're going to show me your sets of chromosomes. So you're going to put them back together. Okay, you're going to show me your sets of chromosomes. Then you're going to show me how they come apart into anaphase and telophase. And then the last part, you're going to tell me in Flipgrid. Okay, you're going to explain in detail what's the next thing that happens. Remember, if we go back to our cell cycle, which is also in your book, okay, so we saw with our Play-Doh, we saw interphase, we saw mitosis and metaphase and anaphase and telophase. What happens next to your strands of DNA? Okay, you're going to tell me what's going on next with your chromosomes. Okay, that's your final step in your Flipgrid. So you're going to log into Flipgrid. You're going to show me all your little chromosomes. And then you're going to tell me what happens next. And then, either before that or after that, you need to show me the phases with your hands. So hopefully you remember interphase, mitosis, prophase, mitosis metaphase, mitosis anaphase, mitosis telophase, and cytokinesis. Okay? All right, go log into Flipgrid and show me what you learned. I will see you later. Bye.